Hello friends, welcome back. I'm Nick. This is MSFS Flight Plans, and together we are on a mission to save the world through flight simulation. Today we're going to explore an area that played a very large role in shaping what my world would become as I grew out of childhood, at least physically. Mentally, I think I'm still stuck around maybe age 12, maybe 13. But we're in Newport, Rhode Island, and aside from being a place I will always cherish for reasons I'll tell you about shortly, it's also the nearest interesting town to Providence, which is not an interesting town at all. But for some reason, it's the location they selected for the 2025 Flight Sim Expo. So for those of you wondering what else there is to do in Rhode Island, if you're going to head out there, well, I'm about to show you. And I decided to take the Mini-500 again because it's awesome and a great sightseeing helicopter. And we're going to need to look out of both sides of this thing because we're going to have things on each side of us. So this works out perfectly. All right, let's fire this up real quick. Then I'll show you the Google map and we'll be off. And start her up. Shut our door. Okay, as far as add-ons, I do have the Mapbox Pro map enhancement. Yet again, I only got a few days left, I think, of my subscription, so I'm trying to jam in all the places that looked horrible before I tried them out with that look a little bit better now. This one looks a lot better. I've been wanting to fly out here for a very long time, and now it's at least passable. In fact, it looks pretty good for a default city. So we're going to check that out. And then I have one freeware mod, the Newport Bridge, which we'll see once we get downtown there, which helps a lot because the bridge that's in the sim by default is just a little flat thing, which looks nothing like the actual Newport Bridge. So let's look at the Google map real quick. Let's zoom out a little bit so you can see where we are. So there's New England, there's New York State, Maine up there, New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, and then little old Rhode Island, smallest state in the country, but still has a larger population than Alaska, the largest state in the country. All right, so here's Providence, and if you fly in for the expo, you're going to fly into this airport right here, Rhode Island T.F. Green International Airport, but we're not going to leave from up there because this is a photogrammetry city, and it is not very well optimized, so it was really giving me some stuttering. We're starting down here at Quonset State Airport. And since Newport is like right there, we'll be there pretty quick. I'm going to fly up here first over Prudence Island, which is going to be a very prudent thing to do because I want to tell you about the history of Newport before we get over the top of it because we're going to have so much to see once we get down there. So we're going to cruise up this way, cut over the top of this over here, come down this way, check out the big Navy base there. Here's the Newport Bridge right here. We'll cruise along this way, look at all the little marinas and the sailboats and everything they got going down there, and then cruise over this side of the island, check out a bunch of old Endicott forts they have up here, come around Jamestown, and then come up this way. Actually, we're not going to cross the Jamestown Bridge. We're going to come around this way and then come down here by Beavertail Park. They call it Beavertail because look at that. There's a little lighthouse down there, which is an in-sim POI. And then we'll come along this way, and all the huge mansions are up here, which is really the jewel of Newport, in my opinion. Then we're going to land at Newport State Airport, just a little bit north of the downtown area. Probably about, I don't know, 30, 35 minutes in the air. We'll see how it goes. The time of day is set at 8:30 a.m. and I moved it to mid-July because there's one big fort which is going to be flat, and I tried to line the shadows up with the actual shadows to make it look a little bit less flat, and that seemed to do it a little bit better. So this one's for mid-July, 8:30 a.m. is what I have it set for if you're trying to duplicate it exactly. Okay, let's get up in the air, then I'll tell you about this airport. And yep, still flying with the assists off. And I haven't flown this one a lot without the assist on, so we'll see how we do. In fact, I've only flown it for our test flights, so not a lot of experience with it, but this one's not too wild and crazy. This is an interesting airstrip right here, so that's true to life, that runway. It's got a giant apron around the sides of it, and you can hardly see where the runway actually is. So I don't know what's up with that. And man, am I glad we have the Mamu Designs Marina Pack, because there are sailboats everywhere in Newport, and it just would not feel like Newport without all those sailboat masts sticking up. So that was cool. And you can see I have my birds add-on in. We had some birds flying around there. Try not to hit those guys. At least they're shadows. Alright, we'll just come on around here, and we'll be off. So if you haven't been around the channel for a while, I lived in Connecticut for 8 years, leaving in 1991. So I spent most of my youth all the way up through middle school. First grade to middle school is when I was out here. I know I should probably be lower than this for taxiing, but I've got a few things on my mind. So I've been out to Newport a lot, and I'm going to tell you why it played such a huge role in my formative years once we get by downtown. So this is Quonset State Airport, and it was the site of the Naval Air Station Quonset Point from 1941 until they started relocating most of the state's military operations in the 1970s. And today it is almost entirely general aviation with a remnant of the Rhode Island National Guard who flies C-130's Hercules out of here. C-130 Hercules. I think the J variant is what it said they have out here. And this is Narragansett Bay. So Providence is straight off that way. You can almost see, if you got a big screen, the profile of the city way off there in the distance. So you just keep going up the bay and you'd eventually hit Providence. And another thing I like about this, is... Oh, we got some ghosting behind that bird. Did you see that? The water really is more brown out here. If you saw our Money and Mansions flight in Miami, I was talking about how down in Miami, a place I've also been a lot, the water is a little bit more... So what is up with the ghosting of those birds? That's odd. That doesn't usually happen. But that's okay, everything else looks pretty good. It does have a brown tint to it, so when you get down close to the water, it's actually very clear and good diving, if you don't mind diving around the coast of New England. But it kind of does have that brown tint to it, which is accurate and very cool. So there's Prudence Island off to our right. We're going to cut across the neck of that in just a minute. And then I'll give you a quick history of the town of Newport before we get out there. But a little bit about Prudence before we hit this spot. Being a true blue island with no connection whatsoever to the land by bridge or otherwise, it has always been a fairly sparsely populated place and used mostly for farming from the early 1600s up until the 20th century when people started building summer cottages out here, and a lot of people built a lot of summer cottages out here. But during World War II, they turned the southern end of the island into a huge ammunition depot, and according to Wikipedia, there's still a bunch of bunkers down there, although I couldn't see any either on the satellite map or the sim, which just broke my heart, as you can probably imagine. Alright, there it is. There's Providence way off there in the distance. And I guess that's the other big airport, probably right over there. You can kind of see it opening up. We're going pretty slow, which I will fix here in just a minute. But I don't want to get going too fast because I got a lot to tell you about Newport. Alright, let's just trim down a little bit. I'm going to try to get to around 1,500 feet. And then stay there, if I can. And if I can get my collective to around 69%, you can see on my little center screen there, I've got a collective percent. I found that around 69% is kind of the sweet spot. And let me get trimmed out real quick because I don't want to climb much above 1,500. Get that dialed in. There is a little grass airstrip you're going to see right up here too, so you could select that if you wanted to, but it's got some flat trees around it. Coastlines, for the most part, are very rocky and very cliffy around here, but most of them look pretty good, despite being a little bit flat. You'll see all that in just a minute. I won't spoil it for you until we get down there. You can see for yourself what it looks like. But Newport itself was originally founded in 1639 on a place called Rhode Island. That was before they called the state that. But today the island it sits on is called Aquidneck. A-Q-U-I-D-N-E-C-K. And many of the earliest settlers were Puritans who split from their earlier settlement in Portsmouth on the northern end of the island and decided to move closer to the ocean just to teach the others a lesson about what happens when you play all that rock and roll music in church. So we've had enough of that. We're going to go take the oceanfront property, which they did. There's that grass strip. And if you look down in the water, even though it is flat, you can see the little rocky coastline, which is about right. No cliffs up here. We'll see the cliffs down by the mouth of Narragansett Bay. And I really couldn't get any details about that little strip, but not a lot of population out here, so whoever is living out here, I imagine, probably has some money. But there was also an early Jewish settlement that arrived in 1658 after fleeing the Inquisition in Spain, and they would evolve to become the Congregation Jesuit Israel, who is now the second oldest Jewish congregation that has been active since they came in the U.S., and their synagogue, which is also still standing in Newport, is the oldest one in the United States, which is pretty cool. Yeah, that's flat, but, I mean, it's flat terrain anyway, so it looks pretty cool, I think. A little bit of relief would have been cool, but it's close enough for me. So if you guys want to drive down here from Providence, it's about a 45-minute drive, even though it's only about 25 miles as the crow flies, because you got to come down around the western side of Narragansett Bay, then cross over the Jamestown and Newport Bridge to get down to downtown. But if you have an extra day, I would definitely encourage you to do it if you're not out here very often, because it is worth a trip. And I mean, there is nothing to do in Providence. I probably went there 3 or 4 times, only because I had a friend that lived out there, and there was just nothing going on. So an interesting choice for the Flight Sim Expo. Not sure what the rationale was behind that. But at least you're close to Newport. Alright, just trim me down a little more. Look at that. That's the only little patch of houses out here. And I guess everything south of that is where the big ammunition depot was. But Newport became a boom town in the mid-1700s as one of the biggest producers of whale oil and its derivatives in the country. And as more entrepreneurs arrived to get in on that action, other businesses started springing up, most relying on the very lucrative triangle trade between Africa, the Caribbean, and these big Atlantic coastal cities, to the extent you could call it a city way back then. All right, just keep trimming down a bit. So this second open spot up here looks like in real life there may be a foundation up there, which might be some of the remnants of the military fortifications they had back in the day. But the big thing up here was rum distilleries. They had 22 of them in Newport alone by 1764. And even though slave ownership wasn't prolific up here, a lot of Newport's wealthy citizens were involved in sponsoring, illegally, I should add, slaving voyages. In fact, a family known as the DeWolfs were the most prominent slave trading family in the U.S. for a while. They lived just a little bit north of here. And roughly 700 residents of the state were running their own slave ships back when all that was going on, also illegally. But once the revolution got fired up, the Brits rolled in with 50 gunships and 7,000 troops, which was apparently enough to convince the locals that they were welcome to stay, throwing in the towel without a fight in December of 1776. After a couple of minor skirmishes, the Brits abandoned the town for reasons I couldn't determine in my research. But apparently they realized that was a mistake real quick because the French rolled in, the French who were helping the U.S. out, and made this their base of operations for the duration of the war. But all that put a pretty serious dent on the economic status of Newport because no one could do any kind of commerce or trading while it was under military control. So it put a hurting on the place. But one thing that the war couldn't suppress was wealthy out-of-towners coming up here to escape the heat of summers without air conditioning in the 1800s, which air conditioning was not in common use until well into the 20th century. And by the end of the 19th century, the ultimate status symbol of the wealthiest families in the country was owning a gigantic mansion in Newport, many of which are also still up here and can be toured today. But the one-upmanship wasn't the only thing going on out here in the 1800s. Newport also gained the U.S. Naval Academy when it moved up here from Annapolis during the Civil War. And from the 1950s to the 1970s, it also hosted a bunch of destroyer cruisers up here for the Atlantic Fleet, right down here to the left, which is the Naval Air Station Newport, or the Naval Station Newport. I don't have a field out there. But again, in the 70s, they shut all this down, most of it, and then that airport we left from was shut down, so it put another shellacking on the local economy. So they decided to kind of reinvigorate the place as a Gilded Age haven that it once was, opening all those mansions up to tourists and kind of revitalizing the Marina District downtown. And that looks pretty cool. Really cool, as a matter of fact. So all these sailboats you see out here, again, are pretty much true to life. You'd probably see way more than this if you came out here. And some people call Newport the sailing capital of the world. Not only is it home to the National Sailing Hall of Fame, but it also hosted the America's Cup races from 1930 to 1983. That little thing over there is called Gold Island, which is also now abandoned. But in 1919, the Navy took it over and converted it to a huge seaplane base. And before that, the Harvard football team would occasionally camp out there and use it for practice, which seems ridiculously impractical. All right, there's the Newport Bridge there. That was opened in 1969, and in the sim, if you do not add that add-on, there's just going to be a flat little bridge coming across there, which is not lifelike at all. And that's pretty close to what it looks like. I feel like it should be a little bit taller, but again, I was pretty young last time I was out here, so I don't remember exactly how tall it should be. So all that stuff down to our left is part of the naval base today. And that little island on the other side of the bridge there is called Rose Island, also now abandoned. And it saw some minor fortifications during the Revolutionary War. And then they started building a place called Fort Hamilton in 1798, but they never finished it. And it wound up being the place for the Navy to store a bunch of torpedoes during the World Wars. And now its only significant feature, other than the ruins, is the Rose Island Lighthouse. That bridge looks pretty good. And off to the left there, connected by that little bridge, is Goat Island, also former home to several forts and torpedo-related things. And now home to a high-end resort and fancy restaurants and marinas. Lots of marinas. And on the other side of it there is the big tourism area. You can see where all those little marinas are. And America's Cup Avenue runs right down through here. So if you're coming to look for good restaurants and shops and stuff, that's where you'll go. That's America's Cup Avenue. Beautiful, beautiful little walk. Just park down there and start walking around. It's gorgeous. Okay, here's the flat fort, Fort Addams. And only this side of it's flat. They've got some ramparts on the southern end of it, which you'll see look very realistic. I don't know how this thing wound up flat. But that was built in the mid-1800s as the U.S. was justifiably growing very paranoid. The Europeans might be eyeballing all of our major military ports. And she was active all the way up to 1950. but like all other northern coastal forts, never saw any action. The walls aren't real high on that, but they're definitely higher than they look here. But look how great all this stuff on this side of it looks. I mean, it's flawless. Look at that. And then that's just flat. Okay, two interesting spots. Eisenhower had a little summer cottage out here, right out here. This is called the Eisenhower House today. And then there's a place called Hammersmith Farm, which is right here. This is the childhood home of Jackie Onassis Kennedy Bouvier. And this was also the location of the reception when her and JFK got married. And it fell into disrepair for quite a while until someone went out there and started cleaning it up. I don't know if they have fully cleaned it up yet or not. Okay, over here to our right, which unfortunately got rendered as a building of some kind. You see that thing with a black roof? That is Fort Wetherill, which was a bunch of Endicott-era batteries with big naval cannons. And when I was a kid, my dad would come out here. He owned a dive shop in Connecticut, and we were about probably 45 minutes away from here. He would drive out here to do all of his open water testing with his students. And he would just park down there somewhere and let me run around in all of those ruins for those forts. And it's not like a big park with tours and stuff. It's all just in total ruins and dilapidated. And this section here is also all part of it. These are just ramparts in real life. They put some buildings down there. But that is where I first gained my excitement about old, ruined things. I would spend the entire day out there. He would just disappear for several hours. I'd run around out there, crawl around in the dark with my little flashlight, crawl around the ramparts and everything, see all the graffiti, beer bottles everywhere. It was amazing. See, some parts of those rocks look really, really good. The parts that aren't rendering flat or droopy look just amazing. And there's the town of Jamestown over there. Not much going on there. It kind of got built up around the same time that Newport did. But then it kind of fell into ruin. And they had a bunch of resorts and stuff there for a while. And now it's just kind of a very high-end residential district. And this is the Jamestown Bridge now, which also kind of... It looks mostly like that, but there's a bigger hump in it. But back in the 1940, actually, is when they finished it, was the original Jamestown Bridge. And that is the most horrifying bridge I have ever driven over in my life. It had a guardrail that was about 2 feet high and just 2 lanes of traffic separated by a yellow line. And when you got up to the top of it, there was just a metal grate that you could just see right down through. It was absolutely terrifying. In fact, I found an old video of that from the 1970s of people driving across it. I'm going to link that in the video description so you can see what I'm talking about. Absolutely terrifying. Anyone from around here that ever drove over that thing knows exactly what I'm talking about. This little thing here is called Dutch Island, and this also has some batteries on it, which actually look like batteries, which is going to be a nice treat right here. That's home to the ruins of Fort Grable and nothing else today. But that was also an Endicott-era battery. But before that, Dutch Island was used during the Civil War as a training facility for the 14th Rhode Island Heavy Artillery, which was an all-black outfit that went down to serve in the defense of New Orleans. And we got some flat trees, too. But at least we get to see some of the batteries. And unfortunately, they took all the cannons and everything out of these. But you can still crawl all over that stuff. So we got 2 little cannon emplacements right here. Here's one, and then there's a big one that probably has, I don't know, 3 or 4. And we'll check them all out at the end on the satellite map so you can see what they look like in real life. But very cool. I like the places that you need a boat to get to because they're usually a little bit less dilapidated and vandalized than some of the other spots. And right down here is another set of Endicott batteries. This one's called Fort Getty, which was another place that I would go and play around at because my dad would park here. And I seem to remember there being some big brick buildings here in the 1980s, but now it's a big RV park. But he would go and do his diving down there, and there's a big battery right here, and then another little one right over here that I'd play around in. I preferred to go down to Fort Wetherill because it was bigger, and kind of up on some cliffs, which was really cool. And we're going to see a little tiny earthwork up here in the woods. Let's see if we can get a little bit closer, called Connecticut, not Connecticut, Connecticut Battery, because it's called Connecticut Island. And that's some earthworks that have been preserved since the Revolutionary War. So this one is the oldest fort out here. That's where the original was built. All these others were built on top of older forts, but this one is what it looks like from the Revolutionary War. And it's going to come up right here in just a second. Let's get a little bit closer. This is going to be right over here. And you'll see it looks very much like a lot of the forts we've seen in Europe that were built around that area, like the ones around Antwerp, and all those other cities, Portsmouth, when we were checking that out in England, all these little surrounding barrier forts, they all kind of had that same design. Look at that. How cool is that? So it was never used for anything after the Revolutionary War. They just maintained it, which is pretty neat. And some more flat trees. And down here at the very end, we have an Ensign POI. This is the Beavertail Lighthouse. It's been there since 1856. And this one is slightly more special than a lot of the others around here, and there are quite a few in Narragansett Bay, because this one indicates the entrance to the bay. And in 1993, they opened a Rhode Island Lighthouse Museum in one of the assistant keeper's houses. I checked that out. Didn't look terribly fascinating. And there's a tiny, and I mean tiny, aquarium down there next to it, too. It looked like you were just standing in someone's living room that had an aquarium built into it. So I wouldn't come down here for the aquarium, but if you want to see a nice little lighthouse, and you kind of have to if you're up on coastal New England, right? This one would be neat to check out. And you can check out the ruins of Fort Getty while you're up here, too. So this is westerly over here. My dad had a house out there for about a year. He was renting. So I spent a lot of time down there by the coast. Musquamacut Beach is down there. We used to hang out down there during the summertime. Watch Hill's also down there. Taylor Swift has a house down there. A very ritzy area. Conan O'Brien, I think his house is down there too. There's the lighthouse. But we're getting real high. Let's come down some. We got some flat rocks, but at least they're not droopy rocks. I'll take that. And we're going to get to see some rocks that actually look like cliff rocks up here in just a minute. Look at this. This is just beautiful. Really, really nice. I really hope this looks really good in 2024 because this is just such an incredible area to fly around. So coming all the way around this side of the island is a little road called Ocean Drive, which is totally worth a drive if you want to take it. Just runs right along the coast all the way around till you get up by the mansions. It'll connect up to Bellevue Avenue, which is where most of the mansions are once you get up here. And they have a lot of very large, probably very, very expensive houses right up here. And we're going to see a few little beaches. All of them are private. You got to be members of the club to go there. And I can't even imagine what they charge you to go down and do that. We'll see some golf courses out here. But it's going to look pretty nice. I wish there were more sailboats because there are tons and tons of sailboats out here. Let's come down even a little bit more. Unfortunately, only one of the mansions, the Breakers, got modeled as a mansion. Everything else is default buildings. The footprints will be about right, but I would love to see these look as they actually do. Although it would be tough to pick a lot of them out nowadays, but you won't miss the Breakers. It's on a very big piece of land. That looks pretty good. Really good. So there's Ocean Drive wrapping around down there. I can just smell that, like, rotting dead crab smell. Nice looking golf course. We're going to see a place here in just a minute that's called Seafair. Built in 1936. Sits on 9 stunning acres with a sunrise and sunset view of the ocean. And is nearly 16,000 square feet under roof. And has been owned by Jay Leno since 2017. And it's going to be sitting right up here on this corner. Oh no, this is it right here. Yeah, because it's that crescent-shaped thing. Look at that. What a piece of property that is. And they said for a while they broke the whole thing up into condominiums. And then they rolled in and broke it all up, made it one house. But they said one end of this thing is still somebody's condo. But I think Jay paid $15 million for that in 2017. These are all the private beaches. And then this one up here is called The Waves. This one right here. And that one is broken up into condos, and based on the Google reviews, they said it's in pretty rough shape, which is shocking for a piece of real estate like that. So here's where all the big Gilded Age mansions were, right along. So Bellevue runs up this way, this is it running up here, and all the big mansions were up over here. Built by the likes of the Vanderbilts, Astors, Morgans, Firestones. They all had places up here. And all along the side of that tiny little path there, that's called the Cliff Walk. So you get on that up here north of the Breakers, and then come on down around this way. You can walk the whole thing if you want to. It's just absolutely beautiful. And then here's the Breakers right here. We'll fly a little bit lower and get a nice look at that. Larry Ellison owns this place right now, so that's the new money that's out here. And Judge Judy bought a place out here not too long ago too, but Larry Ellison bought this. This was the Astor's former place, and he put $100 million into renovating that thing. I'll show you that on the satellite map too. the breakers was completed in 1895 by Cornelius Vanderbilt II. This is it right here. Grandson of the Cornelius Vanderbilt. And it has over 62,000 feet of living space and cost the modern equivalent of $220 million to build. But as the generations rolled on and the family fortunes became watered down, the residence was too expensive to maintain, so Gladys, one of the Vanderbilt's daughters, started leasing it to the Newport Preservation Society for $1 a year in 1948 with an agreement that she could maintain the residence on the 3rd floor for herself. And her daughter Sylvia sold the whole place to the society in 1972 with the agreement that she could live there until she died, which she did in 1998. And I think some of her family was still living in there until 2018. But perhaps the most notable Vanderbilt descendant still kicking today, Anderson Cooper, the great-great-great-grandson of the original Cornelius Vanderbilt. All right, let's start slowing down. We're coming on in here. So this is the Newport State Airport, former home to Aquidneck Park, a horse racing track from the 1800s that doubled as a car track for the wealthy summer residents to show off their expensive cars. And it became Newport Airpark in 1946 and was used mostly for training by local military pilots, and then the state took it over in 1960, and it's been almost entirely GA since then. And it's not a big place. I can't even imagine how much it costs to rent a hangar out here. The grass looks a little bit darker out here for some reason than it did on the other side, but that's okay. Looks a little more natural colored off in the distance there. That looks like it's probably a public beach, judging by that huge parking lot. All those others by the ritzy area are private. Yeah, I would bet that one's probably public. Alright, where's our airport? Okay, it's over here. We're doing alright. So if you want to take this flight just like we are, the link for it will be in the video description. You can just load it up into a little NavMap. If you don't know how to do that, I do have some tutorials that'll get you up and running real quick in little NavMap in our how-to section. And you can also hop on our Discord server. The link for that will be in the video description, along with the link to the add-ons used in this flight and the bookmark file, so you can find all the places that we've been checking out here without having to search for them and bookmark them yourself. And we do have our group flight in the Virgin Islands coming up tomorrow night, which is which is Thursday, the 19th, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want to participate in that, just hop on our Discord server, go down to the voice chat section for group flights. We'll be in there at about 8:45. If you've never done one before, we'll get you up and running in no time, no experience required. No matter what level of pilot you are, how long you've been in simming, come along. It's always a lot of fun. And I'm having a very serious problem. When I get over one section of the Virgin Islands, my sim keeps crashing to desktop, so I'm going to hang out a little bit west of that and meet up with everybody, because I can't start there, nor can I fly over it, or the sim keeps crashing. I would try to troubleshoot that, but I figure in 2 months I'll be taking this out and putting 2024 in anyway, so I'm just going to let it ride. Boy, look at that place down there. Looks like a stable or something. A little farm down there. Looks like a co-op or something. They're growing all kinds of stuff over there. Alright, I'm going to take the advice of Bella242, one of our recent members of the channel and our Discord server. Also a real-life helicopter pilot, and if you haven't checked out his YouTube channel, he has some very practical advice, much more sage than mine since he flies real helicopters in real life, if you want to check it out. But his last bit of wisdom was for approaches, try landing on a runway approach instead of just plopping down over a square somewhere. That's what we're going to do. There is a little helipad off to the left, so we'll try that. I've done it for all my test flights, and it is a lot easier when you have something straight to aim for. You kind of take a glide slope down to. These fields look real nice. Check that out. Really good. And because the time of day is set right, the shadows look about right, even though they're flat, looks pretty good. But I would absolutely come down here, guys. It's not cheap. This is not a budget-friendly area, but you have got to tour those mansions. It's incredible. There's probably 5 or 6 of them you can still tour. So the Vanderbilts place, and then Alva Vanderbilt, who was the sister-in-law of the guy that built the breakers. And there's a couple of other big places built by some bigwigs back in the day, but it's just amazing to see that. And I did find, I don't think they let people do video tours inside those places, because I could not find any videos of the inside of the breakers except for very short clips. But I found a pretty good video that kind of tells the history of it and shows you some of the rooms in there. It's unbelievable. So I'll link that in the video description as well so you can check it out. But the thing that's amazing about these, I mean, even if you build a $100 million house these days, you still got drywall, walls, and things like that. These things were the finest of everything. flying people in, craftsmen in from all over the world, materials in from all over the world to build these. Nothing was spared. It's just insane. I've been in a lot of ritzy places around the country, but nothing can compare to these. And it's just fascinating as you're walking through there to think that this was someone's like home where they were living and doing family things. Just incredible to think that somebody lives like that. Alright, the helipad is over there to the left by that little red and white tower. So we'll just come on down the runway here until we get low enough and then we'll cruise over there. If you are going to the Expo in 2025, let me know. I'm still trying to decide if I want to or not. If enough of you guys that I know are going out there, I'll probably do it. I didn't go last year because our one family vacation for the whole summer was already scheduled for that particular weekend. But I'd love to get the chance to meet some of you guys face to face. That'd be a lot of fun. Okay, so we'll just come over that little taxiway there and then see if we can put this thing down on the little square. And once we get over there, you can see there's a couple of silhouettes of planes and a helicopter over there that did not get modeled but would be in the satellite image. I don't know if we'll be able to see them as we're coming in here. So stick around for just a minute. I will give you a little satellite image tour when we're done so you can see what a lot of this stuff looks like in real life. And I'll give you a couple of more facts and figures. What is that over there? A big warehouse of some kind? Probably not what it looks like in real life. Alright, so far so good. That was a lot easier to come down the runway like that, instead of just trying to hover and land. I keep talking about putting up that final exercise video for you guys trying to learn how to fly these out of System. That's the one out by Victoria Falls. Chasing that gondola up and down that cliff. I tried it again last night. It's just so incredibly hard. If I can't get any better at it, I'll just show you what I'm trying to do, so that you can try to do it. I'd love to see some of you guys that are really good sim helicopter pilots give it a shot. One of our guys, Gulf, was out flying with me, and he did it very well. I was astonished. I was terrible. Absolutely terrible. It's hard. Really hard. But a lot of fun to try to practice. Alright, there's our spot. See it right there? And there's the helicopter off to the left. See it? And then the plane over to the right. Alright, I'm going to have to concentrate for just a second. And I still can't get a real nice, easy, precise touchdown. I'm kind of just having to plunk it down at the end. Or I hit that ground effect area and then come back up and start wobbling all around. So once we get over there, I'm just going to try to plop her down. And that'll be it. Oh, please, let me do it good just for once, just for the recording. Wouldn't that be something? Yeah, that's what happens. I get right down there and then that kind of thing goes on. So let me know, you guys that are helicopter pilots, how to get better at that. Alright, but we're down. Okay, let's just shut her down real quick. I'll just turn the fuel off. That should do it. There we go. Alright, let's look at a little NavMap real quick. Get rid of our trail, take the centering off. Yeah, so that was probably, that open area was probably the airport. We saw it right about here. We were looking over there. And there would be downtown Providence. So if you want to drive down here, it looked like, I put it into the little Google driving thing, and it said the fastest way was just to come down here. There's 95 again. We've seen that about a dozen times on this channel. Just come down this way and then come over the two bridges down here. They said it's about a 45-minute drive, depending on how the traffic is. So here's Prudence Island up here. There's that little airstrip. And you can see it's hard to spot any remnants of whatever was going on down here in World War II. And it seemed like everything they were building had something to do with torpedo storage. So maybe they were just loading those things up with the destroyers or what? I don't know. Okay, so as we came around here, there's Ghoul Island, also used for torpedo storage, which you can see is also vacant today. This is a wildlife preserve now. But there's the foundations of everything that used to be out here. And maybe when they were loading the ships up with torpedoes, they just park them there. If they weren't just hauling them over to the base, which is right over here. It looks like there's a lot of Coast Guard stuff out here now, but they do have some Navy training facilities, several of them. Pretty big-time places, too, that they're using for out here, but I don't think they keep any ships out here anymore. And there's the Newport Bridge, and then here's Rose Island. Also, this is the one that almost had a fort built on it. And you can see they do have a couple places where cannons probably were at one time, but this is where Fort Hamilton was supposed to be, that they never completed. And then down here is Goat Island, which also used to have some forts on it. I don't know where those might have even used to be, because that doesn't look like, but they said there were originally a bunch of forts out here. Now it's just a huge resort. So when you come out here, this is where you're going to want to hang out. America's Cup Avenue on this side of the island, then we'll look at Bellevue Avenue next. But look at all these sailboats out here. See what I'm talking about? I mean, they're everywhere. Just everywhere. It's so gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful area. And there's our fort. This section looked perfect, absolutely flawless. And that's the part that was flat. And out here, this was just rendered as a big building. This is a redoubt that they had out in front of it, which is pretty cool. Look at that thing. But it looks like a big building in the sim. So there's where Eisenhower's house was, his little summer home. And then here's where Jackie O's place was, and where the Kennedys had their wedding reception. Hammersmith Farms. Looks like a nice place, huh? All right, up here is my childhood fantasy land, Fort Wetherell. So there's the batteries we used to go play around. These are my favorite ones over here, though. These are the big ones. Up on that cliff like that, it was just so cool. So my dad would park here, go down here to do his diving, and I would just walk over here. I was like 9 years old. You could do that in the 80s. Walk all the way over here, play around with these things for several hours, and then just come back and meet him. It was just so cool. Really, really cool. There's a significance to this place, but we flew too close to the top of it. What was it? Let me jump back a little bit. I want to tell you about that. There's something significant about that. Who built that? Rose Island, Goat Island. All right. That was built by Joseph Wharton in the 1880s, and he was the co-founder of Bethlehem Steel and the guy that founded the Wharton School of Finance up at UPenn. That's what was significant about that one. So that's pretty neat, and you can see that's a pretty sweet place now, too. I don't know if that's open for tourism or if someone's living in there now. Here's Jamestown over here, and this is the island where they were training the black outfit, the Heavy Artillery Division, who went down to defend New Orleans. And look at that. This one actually looked pretty close to real life. Never went out to this one because it's not connected to the land, but that's pretty cool. Oh, and they even got an abandoned building up there, too. Look at that. Oh, man. That is really cool. Here's where Fort Getty is. I also played around on these. So the only real stuff to crawl around on, there's a little set of batteries right here. And then they got another little set right down here. Not as cool as Fort Wetherell. And then here's where the Connecticut battery was. This is the one from the Revolutionary War. Look at that little thing. So nice that they would preserve something like that. And I bet there was stuff like that all over the place, but they were just like, nope, this one's not going to disappear. We're going to maintain it. That is just awesome. Too bad there's not any cannons down there. But at least they kept the earthworks, which is awesome. And then down here is where the Beavertail Lighthouse is with their tiny little aquarium and the Lighthouse Museum. So there's the aquarium. You can see they have parking for all of, what, 3 cars maybe? Not a huge place. And then we came over here. Here's Ocean Drive coming around this way. And you can see that's pretty much what it looked like. I mean, you couldn't get the full, depth and the height of the cliffs. But at least it looks rocky, because that's what it looks like in real life. And we came over to these private beaches, and here's Leno's place, Seafair. Look at that. Boy, how big do you think his garage is? I bet it's huge. He said he was out here with his wife, just driving around, and decided he'd stop by here, found out it was for sale, and he said, I'll take it. Bought all the furniture inside of it, too. He said he bought the furniture because he didn't like dealing with picking out fabric swatches. Which is just perfect. All right, there's all the private beaches, and then here's the Waves, that place that they made into condos, which apparently doesn't look all that great, but boy, that would be a nice piece of property. Look at that. How has someone not just bought that, torn it down, and built something better there? I mean, that's like the primo, other than Leno's spot, maybe even better than Leno's spot. Look at that. Look at all the acreage and everything. That's insane. All right, so all the mansions start over here. Most of these are privately owned now. I'm going to try to remember which ones are not. I think this one might be open for tourism, although it looks like they're redoing the gardens there. I'm trying to remember which ones are the ones you can still tour. Marble House was where the other Vanderbilt lived, Alva, who had a real beef with Mrs. Astor for a while, but this is how she made her way into, had a real hard time. She was kind of a pistol, so she had a hard time getting in the crowd down in Manhattan, which is where they all lived during the rest of the year. But up here, threw a few big parties up here and finally gained the favor of Mrs. Astor, who was her next-door neighbor. And this is where Larry Ellison lives now, so he bought the Beechwood place. And he's building it up. Boy, he's doing some landscaping too, huh? Look at that. And Rose Cliff, can you tour that one? I just cannot remember. I'm sorry, guys. But here's where the breakers are, and then here's where their stable house was, which you can go and tour here. So they kept all their horses and carriages and whatever else they wanted to play around with over there, and then here's where the breakers were. Just unbelievable. That place is amazing. If you do nothing else in Newport, you got to check that out. It's insane. And I just don't. I think these are privately owned now. I don't know why I put bookmarks there. They didn't look like that in the sim, but I probably just wanted to point them out in case they did everything. And then we came on into our airport there, Newport State. So that's it, guys. That's Newport. Take a little trip out there. It's just so nice. Even though it's not flawless in the sim, it looks pretty good now, especially if you have the Mapbox Pro enhancement for the map enhancement. It looks a lot better. But even in default, it's okay. It's worth a trip, especially if you kind of get the clouds just right and everything. Just absolutely beautiful. If you feel like taking a group flight, join us tomorrow night. That will be the 19th of September, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope to see you guys there. I'd love to talk to you all in person. Other than that, had an absolute blast. Even though I've been out here before, learned a lot of things, and boy, I cannot wait to see y'all again in the skies. Later.